I love the wait time for the live stream to get going. It's kind of like watching water boil. Come on, come on, come on.
So true.
And then making sure it's dead. And bada boom, bada bing. We are live and up and running. It is Triple T number 66 on April 4th, 2023. Whoop, whoop. And a lot of people don't know this about me, but 66 has always been one of my favorite lucky numbers. So this one feels a little special for that part. The very first.
Any reason why?
No, it started when I was a kid, which ironically, hey, Saba, most people give it away. For those of you that thought I was 21, I'm not. I was born in 67, but I always considered 66 to be my favorite lucky number. And the very first car that I bought was a 66 Plymouth Satellite at the age of 12. Still got it. Wish it was in the condition that it was in when I was 17. But beyond that, let's get on to all of the YouTube and etiquette and introduction and blah, blah, blah. Those of you that are tuning in for the very first time, my name is TJ Zebel. I lovingly call myself a professional problem solver, which I've now got to do the disclaimer weekly. No, that doesn't mean I have all the answers. I just have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas and have learned how to ask questions to help get down to the solutions. And if I can't find the solution, I have a way of figuring out who and how to ask. For those of you on YouTube, special welcome. I do have a YouTube channel, TSWB Helps, and I would appreciate it if all of you would rush over there when this is over and click a whole bunch of buttons, click the subscribe button, ring the bell, click the like, click the comment, tappity tap with some comments inside of there, and that all helps me out. I also have a website, www. Yeah, like we need to say that anymore, but for some of them out there, we're still going to say it. The TSWB.com. That's right, the tall, skinny white boy.com. And on there, you can contact me. I do offer a free 30-minute consultation. That's your opportunity to get a hold of me and ask me anything. It's your time. And if you're looking for help with some stuff, we'll see if we're a good fit. If we're not, I will let you know and will do my best to find the right person for what you're looking for. If you're watching this for the very first time on YouTube or whatever, on my weekly webinars, what I do is the first hour, I usually try to have at least 3 subjects that I'll talk about. And then the second hour, I open it up to open mic, open platform. Anybody that's on the Zoom meeting can ask questions, and I let all of the people on the meeting answer first, and then I'll add my 2.5 cents and maybe 4. If you came here with some questions or topics that you would like for the second hour, go ahead and please type them into the chat area so that we don't have the polite squirrels, if any of you know that reference from back in the day when cartoons were cartoons. And No, after you. No, really, after you. No, I insist, after you. No, after you. And then we just wait for 4 minutes until somebody finally jumps, and that's usually when 3 people speak up at the exact same time, and then we go into another 30-second lull waiting for somebody to jump in again. Yes, I had some coffee this morning and it's still working, I guess. Good thing I took a nappy nap. I also like to open up with anybody got anything they'd like to share from the last week, other than the fact that it's Nancy's birthday. She's 24 again with a few years experience. And got a few texts from other people telling me to say happy birthday to you. And a few saying they're going to be joining us late. So appreciate you showing up. Nancy and I have known each other for a couple of years, a couple of decades. Couple of years. We'll go with that because if you're 24, I didn't meet you when you were 4. Anyhow, back to anybody got anything they'd like to share from the last time we were here chit-chatting on number 65?
I'll pop in. I am starting a weekly Wednesday Facebook streaming. I think that's what we're going to call it, Facebook streaming. But it's called Winning. It's Win Within, and it's with a person that I met thanks to podcasting, George Jones, former NFL running back, and we're starting it tomorrow. And we're offering guidance and insight and inspiration on the best ways we know how through our own life experiences. So be sure to tune in tomorrow, and it'll be on my website, on my Facebook page.
So awesome! And what is the name of the the Facebook page so they can look it up?
Right now it's going to be on mine, so you can just go to Lenore Edwards, or it'll be on his and all social media, because I don't have a formal Facebook page, but it'll be there. So Lenore Edwards, check that one out.
Okay, that's awesome. What time approximately?
Noon Eastern Standard Time.
Noonish Eastern Standard
Noonish.
Time.
Noonish. I like that. That's Minnesota talk, I think. Noonish.
As the 2 Minnesota people go, yeah, I'll be there about noonish then, you know. After I get done with the chores. Anybody else before we dive in? Bueller. All right. Well, if any of you checked out my Facebook page, you may have seen the topics for the week. And these were inspired by some of my clients. Number 1, picking your alpha. Number 2, communication breakdown. Number 3, resistance buster. Almost sounds like a song, doesn't it? Well, jumping right into picking your alpha. This one came from one of my clients who I'm working with on relationships, and they're looking to get into a relationship. And with all of the awakenings that we're having now between male or masculine and feminine energy, and all of the above, she realized that she was going to need strong masculine energy so that she had the opportunity to live in her feminine energy. Because of her upbringing, she's been living in both and primarily masculine energy since she was just a very young child. And with all the self-work that she's been going through lately and all the above, she realized that her king was going to have to be well versed in masculine energy and be an alpha. a strong alpha. Otherwise, she would lose interest and not feel protected. But the interesting part about that is we got into talking about how many different types and levels of alpha there are. And the question I brought up to her, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being beta, 10 being full alpha, where does she see her king? And her first knee-jerk reaction was, well, he's got to be a 10. I said, cool. What kind of a 10? Which kind of threw her for a little bit. And I said, understand that there are so many different types of alphas. There's business alpha, there's leadership alpha, there's survivalist alpha, there's special forces alpha. You have to define and be careful how you use a blanket term of alpha. And she got to thinking about that a little bit. And I said, understand, regardless, and I know this is a hot topic, and at this point, it's fine. It's a great example. Regardless of how you feel about Trump, love him, hate him, demigod, whatever you think of him, you'd be hard pressed to convince anybody that he's not an alpha. Then you look at people like General Patton. Again, regardless of what you think about him, unquestionably an alpha. Then you look at American Sniper Chris Kyle, and those type of guys, definitely alphas. Then you look at the pro bodybuilding circuit. Ironically, not all of them are alphas. You would think so. And then you look at people like MMA fighters. In the ring, you don't have a choice. You've got to be alpha. That's a place for 2 alphas fighting out who's got better technique and stamina and training and fitness and all the above. But what are they like when they're out of the ring? How are they at home as an alpha? How are they in the bedroom as an alpha? You'll find that a lot of big, high-level CEOs are alphas in the meeting room. But when it comes to the bedroom behind closed doors, they're tired of being the alpha. That's where a lot of them want to be the sub. And so when I'm working with clients, these are additional little levels that most they've never realized were things that they needed to think about. And for those of you that are working with relationship clients, this is also something that you'll want to keep in mind so that they can resonate on the proper frequency, understand what additional questions they want to ask, what they can additionally look for to make sure that they find a proper match for their forever person. Does that make sense? I know I threw a whole lot at you guys in a whole 10 minutes. So any questions, ahas, epiphanies on what we covered so far?
I thought it was great that you pointed out the different areas that somebody could be an alpha in versus where they couldn't be. It was something that I really just didn't perceive a lot of. And I don't think it was really as something that I was aware of when I was younger, being more feminine or being more masculine at that point. So it's definitely something that's come into my awareness more so over the last, I'd say 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else?
I'll jump in real fast. A couple thoughts that came to me when you were talking about that. The first one was, I think there's two, like there's true alphas, and then there are also kind of, shall we say, posers, or the thought that was coming to me was, speak softly and carry a big stick. And I think a lot of people have negative attitudes towards so-called alphas, but I don't think it's the true alphas. It's more the people who are trying to overcompensate and are pretending to be alphas. And then the other thought came to me too, is it's the really truly amazing people, I think, are the people who can move in and out of that state. So somebody who could be an alpha for a while, be a, when it's needed, but can also, soften and, be the other side, I think is, and obviously, different people are going to be different percentages and stuff, but yeah, I think there's something amazing about somebody who could choose to be it when it's needed and choose not to be it when it's not needed.
Cool. Appreciate that insight. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? And I had a squirrel run across the road with an idea and I didn't catch it. Oh, posers. Posers are especially in relationship, I'm going to say are probably the dangerous ones, especially for somebody looking for a real alpha. And if you're not truly in touch with what you're looking for, I think you run a much higher risk of being fooled until it's too late. And so if you're one of those out there looking for a relationship, that's part of why I came up with the wait to date protocol. And the feedback I'm getting on it now, I don't know if it's the timing or if it's the year or if I've just gotten enough feedback from other clients that my clients are getting much more intense breakthroughs, and the things that they're seeing in other people. One of the things that I've been able to really push on the wait to date protocol is this is the time to analyze, study as many of the opposite sex as possible. Married, single, in a relationship, doesn't matter, as long as they're in the gender that you're looking for. And interact with them as many as possible. Use the trifecta, the echo talk, 3 magic questions, values and criteria, because this is your time to get better at the trifecta. And 2, analyze any reactions that you have to who they are and why. Again, whether they're married, single, in a relationship, doesn't matter, because each one of those reactions will be a small mirror about yourself. If you notice that, there's this one person that, married guy, and every time you run into him, he just makes you feel good. What is it about him that makes you feel good? Is it the way he talks? Is it his energy? Is the way he addresses you. When you start asking him questions about his values and criteria, and you start realizing that they're in alignment with yours. Are there any that surprised you or that you didn't think about? And what's even better is the ones that offend you. What is it about them that you can't stand? What is it that they said that set you off? Why did it set you off? What is it about your values and criteria that brought a reaction out of you? And is that a positive or a less than positive reaction for who you want to become to be the perfect match for the king that you've described and built in your mind? Part of the reason I have my clients do a journal, and I have them write down every single minute detail they can come up with about their partner, good and bad. So that, and it's not that I hate when they do this, it's like when I did mine, one of my criteria was non-smoker, because I quit nicotine on 666. And I was like, I'll be friends, but my person, my queen, does not use nicotine. And you have to put those things in because you don't want to find out that, oh, they're 80% of what I'm looking for. Unfortunately, the 20% is all the things I absolutely hate and loathe. But when you've got your just met rose-colored glasses, oh, everything is wonderful, that 20% doesn't stick out nearly as much until you've been moved in for a couple of months. And then you realize that that 20% grows on you like a frickin' weed. And pretty soon that 80% erodes to 60, 50, 40. That's why I emphasize how important it is for that 1 year to step back, live life full throttle, do as many different things as you can with as many people as possible to gather information, to reevaluate your values and criteria. If you want an alpha, make sure that you understand how many different layers there are to that concept. What type of an alpha are you looking for? And guys there are guys out there looking for alpha females. Because if a lot of them, I just saw a deal on with Jocko, and a guy said there's only one, and I may get it wrong, and if I do, go ahead, correct it in the comments, please. But he said there's one sentence in the Bible about picking a bride. And it has to be someone that will go to war with you. You want somebody so that you're not constantly the only one out on the front fighting for the relationship, for the family, for the household, for all the above. And especially for alphas and warriors, that can be very important. They want somebody who is alpha enough in their feminism, in their feminine energy, to be a mate, not a prize. Does that make sense? Anybody got any comments on that portion before we change gears? No? Good. Hopefully I'm explaining it clean enough that it's going through. That brings us towards the bottom of the hour. And if you guys don't have any other questions or input on that, we'll switch gears. Cool. Thank you, Linda. Linda and Savo nailed it. Makes sense. Next one, communication breakdown. Anybody here feel like it's getting more and more challenging to communicate with people using voice, like face-to-face, like communicating with people without an electronic device in the middle? If so, leave a say yes and type yes in the right. The things I want to say, but because this is a public forum, I've been interacting with a number of people, and I'm not picking on the younger crowd, but I'm picking on the younger crowd. Please learn how to communicate with people other than through text or email. Learn how to talk, hear the words coming out your mouth, and hear the words coming out of the other person's mouth. More than once, I've been trying to communicate with people out in public and caught myself a couple of times. No, actually what I said was. And maybe it's just, no, it's not. One of the benefits of learning how to do echo talk, 3 magic question values and criteria, you learn how to listen to people, how to respond to people, how to understand what they're saying, hopefully even beyond the words that they're using. And the event that sparked off this subject was actually yesterday, in the grocery store. And you know how some grocery stores, they'll let different companies stand by the entry exit area and pitch their sale on you. And as somebody who teaches sales and communication, it kills me how many of these people that I walk by, and it's like they all go to the same training. Hey, could I interest you? Could I talk to you real quick about your windows and your siding? No, well, yeah, but we got a really good product and products and benefits and if you can I get your information and we'll send you some more information about our benefits of our product. No, I'm not interested. But can I get your and so I because I just can't help myself, I offer to teach them a couple of different approaches. And I say, you don't have to use them, but try them. how are your numbers? Oh, well, our company wants us to get the words that came out cracked me up. They only expect us to get 8 a month. I said, so you've actually set your standards, your number, your expectations that low? What if you set your own standards for not 8, but 20? Well, yeah, but they only expect us to get 8. I know, that's what you said. And chances are you're probably working your butt off 5 days a week with the approach. And when I offered my alternate approach, the answer was, oh no, they don't let us we have to do it exactly the way they say. Oh, what a shame. Because everybody has their own personalities. And if you took 50 people with 30 different personalities and told every one of them that they could only use this approach, you've done a disservice. It's like telling a fish, you absolutely have to climb the tree to talk to people. Well, and this young man, God bless him, I hope he finds a job that he's good at. He went into features and benefits 3 times, even though I told him, we've already had a rep out, we already got a bid, I've been using your product for about 15 years, used to be able to buy them wholesale, know the product quite well, we're not ready right now. Well, but if I could get your address, we'll just send somebody back out there, and we've got a special offer for people. And I'm like, yes, I know. We already got called about that. Well, yeah, but we've got this special offer that we can offer people that for extra. I went, yeah, you just told me that. I said, have you ever pushed so hard that you lost a sale? What? I said, you're the second person from your company that I've asked that question, because you guys seem to misunderstand and not be able to hear the words coming out my mouth. Can you repeat what I told you? And the look on his face, what? What did I tell you? What do I know about your product? Well, that we came out. I said, yeah, that's one part of about 10 things I told you. What else? Well, if you just give me your address, we can send somebody out there again. You don't hear a word we say, do you? You are so focused on spewing a script and wearing people down until they give you an address. And you wonder why your numbers are so low. And your company says that they only expect you to be able to get 8. And it's not just in sales. Anybody else have any things that they've noticed lately about communication challenges, shall we say?
I've noticed a lot of communication challenges. Sometimes they're overly pushy and sometimes they're not able to communicate at all. And they can't elicit anything beyond a hi and taking the credit card. So it really, is quite the range of communication.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has gotten so much worse since the start of, you know what I'm talking about, 3 years ago. With the lockdown, the lack of communication, everybody having to communicate electronically, not being able to view enough facial expressions to get back into the acuity of recognizing questions or discussed or we're done or it's over or body cues or anything of that nature.
There's a ton that's missing, a ton, especially yes, from that, and then also with devices, and then people being in front of devices for an extended period of time. And I personally, I will only speak for myself, I am noticing a massive difference in development for children that are using a VR, so virtual reality, on a continuous basis. And I haven't looked up the research, but I'm pretty sure that there is quite literally different brain development and different wiring that is happening, because when they're now on the outside, like in actual reality, they really have a hard time connecting, a very hard time connecting. And I think it's shifting the brain development more significantly than we imagine.
Yeah. And they're going from 3D to 5D. Possibly 6, 7, 8, and people are like, "What?" When you're in a virtual reality situation, very few of them are experiencing all that comes with experience. They're locked in, they're in a room inside, controlled environment, and they go outside. Now you've got wind, you've got temperature fluctuations. Now you're in front of a person. You're not able to work the script as well. There's no restart. There's no, click this button and the pressure that they feel, because I have a number of young clients I've been working with. The level of fear and anxiety in the younger kids these days is, I don't know that, it's hard for me. I haven't been doing this long enough for me to stand up and say, it's terrible these days. But the adults that I'm working with, even when they have fear and anxiety, the triggers and the backgrounds and what has caused it are so different than the young kids that I'm working with today. I'm working with adults that grew up in very abusive households, narcissistic households, and lack of true love and all the above. And yet the majority of their challenges or issues were not brought up by the abuse. They came about later. The kids that I'm working with today, if they get blocked by somebody on social media, that is a gang beating of exponential proportion. They are almost killed mentally, physically, mentally, because they got blocked by somebody or they got bullied on social media. And I may be a little old school, but the way we blocked somebody back in my day was you called them outside after school and fisticuffs. And ironically, after the black eye went away, you still respected the people. I watched it more than a few times. I had a couple of friends that their mouth wrote checks that their body wasn't ready to cover. They got their butts whooped many times. And ironically, nowadays they're still friends with the people that they got in a fight with. But I look at these kids now, and like I say, that the idea that they got blocked totally scares the bejesus out of them. And when I ask them, what's going to happen when you're no longer dealing with virtual world, when you have to go to work, like work, like if you don't figure out a job that you can do in your cubicle and you have to go out into public, how are you going to handle that? And that is something massive that we have to work through. And it blows my mind, sadly. Any other comments?
I've got one as well. Another thing I've noticed just in communication is that people are a lot more, there's still something underneath, but I notice people have a lot more talking points, scripts, like they're not themselves, they're not an individual, and it's a lot harder to actually dig in and find their own unique personality. And I asked somebody recently, and they were vulnerable enough with me to say, I actually can't meet myself. I can't communicate with myself. I'm terrified. If I sat alone for 5 minutes in quiet, alone with my thoughts, I'm terrified of who I might be and who I might meet. And, it just broke my heart, but it was a very interesting insight too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I was going to say it, that how sad is that? I mean, go ahead.
Yes.
No, I was just going to say, I grew up free range parenting. We were told, eat your breakfast and get outside and don't come home until the street lights come on. No cell phones, bicycles, building forts out in the middle of the woods where nobody knew. Only 4 of us knew the trail to the fort. Or going out to the sand pit where there wasn't anybody working. Sometimes people wouldn't be there for 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And we're hanging out there playing around and digging tunnels into the side of a hill. Well, if that would have collapsed, we would have been sufficiently disappeared. And here we are. But the amount of stuff that it taught us, independence, who we were, figuring out the hierarchy in our group, whether we agreed with it or not, we fought for hierarchy until it was established and we were comfortable with it. So, Lenore, you were gonna, please.
I was just piggybacking off of what Holly said, and I found that I was very much in my head, and quite literally, I could not come out of my head because I was so uncomfortable in my body many years ago. And when your friend or the person that you were with had said that they found it really difficult, they were afraid of what they might find when it was quiet. I could completely understand that, because there was a period of time where I had no idea. I knew all the voices that in my head, but I had no idea how to manage them, control them, wrangle them. It was a mess. So when I was by myself, there were so many extremes, and it's heartbreaking that when we talk about personal growth, when we talk about getting to know ourselves better and really understanding our values and standards and boundaries, that these are sometimes social words that are just thrown around and they're not really grasped onto until you come into a group like this or mastermind or other people who can show you a bit more and a bit more and a bit more and reveal even more to really understand, A, you're not crazy, and B, there's a way to help yourself. And so many people are so willing and open to share their experience because when you've done the work, you know how painful it was when you were over there. And you know, A, it's not all rainbows, roses, and sunshine over here, but it's way better than over there. So it might as well be rainbows and roses and sunshine over here.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. The other thing, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Jordan Peterson. And one of the things that he talked about was the vital importance of learning communication, learning how to write, learning how to read, learning how to communicate with many different people on many different levels. I've been blessed beyond words, the amount of people that I've gotten to spend time around, the places I've gotten to live, the different professions that I've had, because it taught me how to communicate, associate, understand so many different people from so many different walks of life. And that what that is worth, if I could simply put that into a program and be able to share that with people, I would in a heartbeat. And then you watch people like Jordan Peterson and Michael Knowles, whether you agree with their political views or not, they are so well spoken. They are so quick-witted. Ted Nugent, people think he is off his chain, regardless of what you think of him. His ability to verbally joust with people is highly impressive. He may be just a crazy Motor City madman rock and roll. Dee Snider, another one that people that are so caught off guard because he's just a rock and roll dude until you get him off stage and have discussions with him, or make the mistake of trying to verbally joust with him, and his ability to eloquently put together arguments like that at whatever level of person he's talking with. And that's another part where I think it's sadly becoming fewer and fewer people that have that ability to communicate at that level. And we're down to 12 minis left in this first hour. Any more comments, epiphanies, ahas to share about communication? Yes.
I had a question about the relationship protocol, the wait to date protocol. And I can't recall if you had said it. When you encourage your clients to write down every detail, do you encourage them also to look at the other relationships that they've observed, such as in a movie or relationships that they admire, and really pull out those details that do resonate with them, or even looking at relationships that don't and pull out those details to help clarify more of what they're looking for?
Very much so. Very much so. My theory is that the ones that have been through a number of relationships, especially, there's an old joke going on that, you know, if you line up all of your relationship pictures of all your relationships, you've got a timeline of your craziness. But it also allows you to go through, and once you understand values and criteria, what was the common thread? What worked, what didn't? That was one of the things that made me come up with the Wait to Date protocol, because I had to look in the mirror and admit to myself, out of all the relationships that I've been in, whether they ended for a decent reason, like I was traveling for quite a bit, I moved, and they didn't come with, whatever, the common denominator was, and even in the long-term relationships that I had that didn't work out, I was the common denominator. And so I had to look at, what was it about them that drew me into them? What made me keep them at a distance? What aspects, if I could cherry pick what I wanted out of each individual person that I'd been associated with, what would that look like? And working with my clients, it also taught me the vast importance of writing down the things that violate your values and criteria, as many as possible. Because in identifying them, you see them much quicker than just waiting for them to pop up. If you don't have them written down, if you haven't identified them, there's a really good chance that the first 2, 3, 4 times that they pop up, they will be low enough to fly under the radar until they reach a level that absolutely offend you. And then looking back, you're like, oh, they only did that like 15 times. Why did this one? Well, because it's always been something that offended you. But especially for the first year or two, you're so gaga, rose-colored glasses, and oh, that you'll miss it, or you'll just kind of let it fly by. That make sense? That leaves us 7 minutes. Go over the resistance buster. And I know some of you are like, the what, the who? Those of you that go to the gym often are like, are you talking about the bands when they break, or no? Nah. Resistance buster was something that I learned from Dr. David Snyder, and I had done some of it on my own before I learned about it. But being we've got 6 minutes to go over, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of some of the ones that can be used, and I'm going to pull up my notes so that I can get to them quickly. One of the ones that works well is when you're talking to people are looking to sell them something, especially in sales. After you've shown them all the features and benefits and all the reasons they should like it, you ask them, so out of curiosity, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how close are you to wanting to buy this? And you can play around with it. If they say 9, you can still go, why so high? Why not lower? And it'll catch them off guard. Even if they say a 1, you're like, why so high? Why not lower? And part of what throws them is they're so used to hearing it, why so low? Why not higher? And they're looking, they feel like you're trying to give them excuses. And in doing that one, they're looking for things they don't like about it. If you ask them, why so high? Why not lower? Now they get into justifying why they gave it that rating. Well, because I like the color. Oh, you like the color. And you echo all of the items that they list off. A, validation. B, because they love hearing the words that just came out the mouth. And oftentimes, just that simple resistance buster technique can take them from a 6 and move them up to an 8. Another one that I learned was the common, well, I just need some time to think about it. And the reply on that one is, I always started off with, well, I don't know, all I know is. And we can cover that one if we got a few more minutes, but you go, studies have actually proven that the majority of people don't need time to think about making a decision. It's almost always because of a lack of information. So what information do you think that you're missing that would help you make a decision? Again, studies have shown it's not, the majority of people don't require time to make a decision. They usually hesitate due to lack of enough information. So what information is it that you feel you might be missing to help you make a decision for or against? I just want to make sure that you have all the information you need before you leave today. And I'll throw in the one that I alluded to. I don't know, all I know is. That's one that I learned from network marketing, and I love it because you can use it in so many different applications. People that are trying to argue a point, it doesn't have to be sales or anything, but you start out with, well, I don't know, all I know is, and then you tell a story about your side. Well, I think the moon is made of cheese. Well, I don't know. All I know is scientists have said it's actually a rock. That's all I've heard. Now, I know I threw a whole lot at you guys in a whopping like 7 minutes. So Any questions on the three that I just tossed at you at hyperspeed? Savo?
It's more of a comment than a question.
Perfect.
I like how you said from 1 to 10, how much do you like it? And they go, I like it 7. And you go, why didn't you say 3? And this is excellent for people who don't have good rapport with you. It's working with resistance on working for you. And on the other end, if you have good rapport with customers, it's some people say customers don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that all goes mostly through body language, tonality, matching, mirroring. The most of it happens naturally. And what I find really powerful is like you know your value, you know value of your product. You ask right questions, and if you're really curious to find out, like you tap in the state of curiosity and determination, because they are not going to buy it unless you're determined about the product, because sales is nothing but we are just transferring the emotions. And so what I realized with my business is we have to be certain about ourselves and what we sell. And then if this connection happens, then we get really curious about their motivation, their needs, what is that they want. And if that happens in the right way, then sometimes we don't need to work through resistance. And many times we will have to work with resistance. So it's definitely, more tools you have in your toolbox, more likely you're going to be able to fix the problem. You said in the beginning of this webinar, you're a problem solver and you fix problems, something like that. And I can completely associate with that. So focusing on people, not the transaction, another big deal, because when emotion is high is when we want to close the deal. And that's what really it changes, deletes, distorts, and generalizes our thought process the whole time. We think once we are in the state, we justify why we want to buy something. And so I always think about those things first. And yes, resistance comes. And if it comes, I try not to manifest it and think about it. But yes, you're so right. If it comes, then that you gotta have a tool. Especially that tool worked for me so many times. From 1 to 10, how much do you like it? 5, why didn't you say 2? And they give you reasons. They go because it's a good car. And let's say, and then you go, okay, you said it's a good car. You echo, and why is that? And then when they answer why, that there is your motivation. Then you repeat that. And then if they go I need time to think about it. And then you say, you need time to think about it. That's right. Because I really don't want to sell you this car yet, because I'm only going to sell it to you if you really like it. All right. And then you go, let me ask you something. I'm just curious because you drove 2 hours to make it here. So you made a trip. You took your time. We spent some time together. Let me just ask you a brief question. What is that? What is there to think about sincerely and honestly? And when you throw these sincerely and honestly, if people's mind taps into that state, and most likely they will tell you something. Like you said, time and money is usually just an excuse to think about things. And then if you find it, then maybe you can give them what they need to look for. And honestly, TJ, I think win-win is something. If you're sincerely in your heart, you believe that you can make win-win in business for them and for you. I think in the end of the day, that attitude is what matters, and that makes the greatest financial both and emotional satisfaction.
Awesome. Thanks, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yes.
And I know we're getting into the second hour, but one thing that also came up is most people don't understand objections are not a no. Objections are very, very often a disguised request for more information.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like blue. Oh, so you don't like blue, and So I'm curious, what is it about blue that you don't like? And if this could come in any other color, what color would you magically make it appear as? And I think I talked about it last week, well, I don't like blue because, that was my ex's favorite color. Whoa, all right, okay. Now we understand it's not the car. It's the memory that the blue brings. If I could find you a car just like this with the same style of features, what color would you prefer it to be in? Well, I've always liked red. If I could find you this in red, would you work with me? Well, absolutely. Now you've found that common ground, that solution provider ability. Anybody else got any comments on that? Like I say, I know I slammed a whole lot at you in just a couple of minutes. There's a face I know. And then it's gone. Bing! Well, hopefully you can get back in. Okay. Well, I didn't see any questions or topics make it into the chat. So now we get to play. What would you guys like to talk about in your hour?
I have a question. There's and it's definitely in like the old archives of videos by Dr. David Snyder, and he goes, I could make you think the walls can make you thin. And that I don't know how to play on words like that. And maybe I'm just not connecting it in the way that I'm connecting it. So any insight and language patterns. I know a number of the hypnotic opening phrases, and there he is, he's back again. But yeah, any insight, any thoughts, any guidance, anything you'd like?
Could you repeat that one sentence again? I can make the walls, or
yeah, I can make you think the walls in here would make you thin, and also with hypnotic language patterns, like how to play on words like that with the environment.
okay. I know that we've got at least 4 people on this call that know exactly what she's talking about. So I'm going to sit back and listen to who's first. Go ahead, Savo.
So the language patterns, I would like to ask you first, Lenora, what would you like to achieve in which context are we talking about?
Just whether formally or informally, because the way that I think of them, and if you want to all educate me on them, by all means, my thought process on them is probably just still very limited from what I had learned back then, and I'm trying to bridge the gap on where I am now to actually point out, oh, hey, you do know what you're talking about, or no, you're missing some pieces.
Well, as you think about all of the learnings that you've acquired so far, and you're definitely noticing what you can learn more. Well, one of the first things where I usually stop and think about when it comes to language pattern in my mind of awareness presuppositions, because that's everything. And if someone says, you might become aware of the blue elephant, or you don't even have to become aware of the yellow giraffe, or these are the things that just put pictures in your mind. And I love to use awareness presuppositions all the time, like realize, become aware of, notice, see, feel, hear. That those things are undeniable. Whether I do sales or do just a class, I use them as often as I can. Then the next, and it's just practice. I think the next one is I often use easily, effortlessly, naturally, Those are the ones that go really well. Also, when you I'm very cautious with the words, let's say, and also, because versus but, because but erases anything before, and also just kind of adds to whatever. I think your mic is not working. Or
No, I'm just nodding along with
gotcha.
it.
You were saying
I didn't
something.
want to interrupt you. You were on a great stream.
Right. So those are the basic ones that I use very often. And depending is sometimes when I do hypnosis, there's deeper stuff that I use. A lot of things from Dr. Richard Bandler. If you really not listen to the books, but his teachings and seminars, you just observe and just start to notice what he uses, how he uses language, the pause, the embedded commands are just something that constantly can be, especially if you layer one on top of another, and then the more people are subtle, and more people are in tune, and they understand, like you, more subtle you have to be in your language, and more people are, let's say, just completely unaware of that, more overt you got to be with your language. And so that's something also that I've noticed in my personal both and like professional life.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Salvo.
Thank you.
Okay, who's up next? Come on, kids. I know you guys know this stuff.
Changing topic a little. I've been fascinated this last week about the interplay between emotions, hormonal release, and physiology, and actually the dramatic difference that things like oxytocin make in your physical body, and things like even arthritis, that your body just works differently if you're flooding it with pleasure hormones than if you're flooding it with stress hormones. Mm-hmm. And how huge that difference is on your physiology. So can I get people to share that? I mean, we're hypnotists. We can create the emotions and leading to the hormonal releases, and we know a lot of how, but I want to do it a lot better than I do. Give me what you got.
Who's going first?
I'll pop in here. Fran, I love your questions. They're so good. From my standpoint, I say whatever way you want. There's a difference between a male and a female, and it is very, very different for females and how we have to work with different parts of where we are in our life. And for me, things that I really like to do are, depending on level of self-care, but also to help keep that humor and that jovialness. I am pretty specific about what I watch on TV. And if it's not comedy, or if it's not romantic comedy, or something that's going where I quite literally know that there's going to be a good ending to it, and my stress is minimal. Like for me, my Hallmark movies, that 5 minutes of where you don't know where it's going to happen, that's about as stressed as I'd like to be while I'm watching a movie. But I'm pretty careful, and I'm very careful with what I keep on my screens. I will tailor my feeds to only funny things or only motivating things. And that's how I maintain where I am. And then depending on where I might, depending on my sleep, depending on the food that I'm eating, I really calibrate. And I've just learned over the years what works for me, what doesn't. And I've done a lot of reflection on it. So it is absolutely possible to keep heightening all those good thingies you want running around your body.
I love the rubbish in, rubbish out perspective with, what you choose to focus on and feed into your body. Yeah, I forget that a lot of the time. And yes, I can do better there.
Anybody else got anything to share?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Matt. I've known TJ for a while. He's been helping me since the beginning, I guess you could say. A few years ago we met, and he's been very pivotal in my personal growth. So thank you so much, TJ. So I'll chime in on that question. I think that we're not really here for a party. It's more like a school. And in that regard, I think that sometimes we have to embrace kind of those negative states and get through them as quickly as possible. And the way that we can do that is by asking, hey, what's the lesson here? So you can get in there, you can say, what's the lesson? What can I actually pull from this? And from there, you can step out of it back into that positive state without kind of leaving anything behind. I hope that makes sense.
So proud of you, man. You've come so far, dude.
Yeah, it's been a lot different, very, very different person than when we first met, for sure, man.
So good to see you here.
Yeah, I've been noticing that, Matt. And yes, it is really useful that by seeing the other side of it, then you have the choice to move it the other way again, because we have the skills. We can do that. And we also have a lot of good friends who can help us do it if we need a bit of a helping hand. And
another angle that I want to throw at this is what the body can endure depending on the state of mind that you're in. Take sports, for example. In American football, even though, I've got friends from across the sea, and they're like, oh, that American football, all those pads, are you kidding me? Until they see some of these guys getting hit head on, flipping 3 or 4 times in the air, and they come down, they get back up, and they go to play. And researchers have said that that's the equivalent of getting hit by an automobile at 30 miles an hour. And yet they will get back up and go play, because in their mindset, they are getting hit during a play activity. And yet you could take somebody who gets caught off guard and gets hit by a vehicle at 5 miles an hour, and it's nearly life-threatening because they were not expecting it. And at the time that it happened, they registered it as a massive trauma event. And because they registered it as such, their body reacted to it in that way. One of the things that I've taught a number of parents, when a kid falls down, before they even have a chance to react, you go, awesome save, way to go. And the kids are like, wait a minute, I'm okay? Oh, that was cool. Oh, I guess I'm good. And off they go. And I mean, these are kids that tripped and did a full-on face plant, back. And you know it hurt. I mean, but you go, awesome save, way to go. You're awesome. And they'll get up and they're like, okay, I'm good. Pew. And then you see other kids that, they get scared, or they get caught off guard, and the parents are like, oh, are you okay? Oh my God. And automatically the kids are like, something bad must have happened. That must have been traumatic. I can't believe I survived. Oh my gosh, I could have died. And I had one mom that was still doing this to her daughter, who was 21. Her daughter's car died on the on-ramp to the freeway, not on the freeway. She turned to get on the on-ramp and it quit. And her mom she's on the phone. She's like, my car quit. I can't get it to start. And I'm on the on-ramp. And I was almost on the freeway. And oh my gosh, I could have died if I what happened when I was on there. Somebody would have crashed into me. And oh my God, it made me laugh. And her mom fed into the frenzy. And I'm in the back seat listening to this on the speakerphone. And I went, stop. All of you. Are you dead? Did anybody crash into you? How fast were you going when the car died? Well, I was only going like 3 miles an hour. Exactly. Stop turning it into you were in the middle of the zombie apocalypse and the airplane came out of the sky and smashed into you and you got ejected from the car into the middle of the zombies and they were tearing you apart. Well, it could have happened. I said, so could have the zombie apocalypse. And part of what I've noticed with people that when you see them in depression or anxiety or fear-based, the physiology will reflect it, but also their outlook at things. Their ability to tell you what could possibly go wrong is sadly amazing. And when you ask them, well, what could go right? Their ability to tell you what could possibly go right is sadly minuscule. And yet when I remind them in the quantum of possibilities, you realize best case scenario is just as possible as worst case scenario.
That kind of leads into a different kind of physiology. You were talking about sports injuries and people with the right attitude just think of it as something that, okay, this happened, let's get on. But I've had people come to me who've actually had a lot of sports injuries, which has kind of led to the physiology of depression and brain injury. And, because they perhaps realize there is some damage that in itself is pretty stressful. So what have you got there to help people that have maybe sustained a lot of and people that have been in an accident and are trying to recover from, major injury and frustrated and depressed about it? How can we help change their physiology, their hormones, their emotions?
And in the second hour, I always let you guys answer first because I've got a whole spiel on this. Go ahead. Who's first?
I'll pop in. So when I've had clients that are coming to me very specifically with events, I do HMRs very specifically to reframe the event and then to also bring in what they would have liked to see happen or what needs they would have liked to have met. And especially with chronic pain, the clinical trials that are coming out now from Brent Baum's work with HMR are really, really impressive. And that's a great thing that'll actually possibly in our lifetime get integrated into Western medicine. But reframing the chronic pain, reframing the emotional pain is so, so incredibly profound and truly life-altering for these people that are open to trying something alternative, also open to trying it a different way. And there have been massive benefits to that. And for me, I just think when people are wanting to feel better and not to mask it, that healing really can come in a variety of ways. And it might not just be with HMR. It can be in that help yourself smorgasbord that I like to refer to, and coming together, whether it be through nutrition and spiritual practice and emotional practice and a variety of things. I really think that they can move through. And our lovely, wonderful Francine is one that we all know personally who has made amazing, amazing leaps and bounds of healing in her life.
And just to throw a little bit more into that, recreating the ability to get different neural pathways working to take over from injured parts. You know, has anybody got any experience with that in this group?
For me, with injured parts, I've also used HMR on my stroke patients. And I know a number of people that have used HMR with people who are post-stroke with half their body not moving and that has not been moving for 2 years, and they're starting to get movement with it. So I find the body and the mind-body connection to be absolutely amazing. And I for one would never say, no, it's impossible, because you never know.
I'll jump in here. I was just going to say a couple things. So first of all, whenever I approach even a physical injury from sports or whatever, the first rule is never make any assumptions, actually gather data, actually listen, because there are people, of course, there are certain injuries, like if they had their legs severed or, like obviously that's beyond this, but, maybe the thing that happened is maybe they were playing the sport out of peer pressure, and what the 90% of the pain is that they feel bad that they gave into peer pressure, or maybe they're, they had a one-off injury and now they've got a skewed vision of what danger is. So I don't know if you've seen the thing of the guy who got bitten by a snake, and he said, he got scratched. He thought he was just getting scratched by a bush because that's what it felt like. And then he almost died. And then after that, when he'd walk through the woods, if he got scratched by a bush, he'd have huge pain because his body was remembering he almost died last time that happened. And so it needed to rewire the brain to say, most of the time when you get that feeling, it really is a bush scratching you, not a snake, a venomous snake trying to kill you. But then the third thing, so I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Pete Egoscue and the Egoscue method. But he talks a lot about the fact that the body is meant to take punishment. It's meant to be able to play football. It's meant to be able to do all these things. Where we get a lot of our pain is when we allow our physical structure to get out of balance. And it's kind of a feedback loop. So like, for instance, if you have a lot of anxiety, you may start breathing from your chest, which throws that bit of you off of balance. And then it's a cascading effect. Different muscles compensate, then different muscles compensate. So a bunch of muscles are doing jobs they weren't meant to do, which pulls your skeleton out of structure. And anyway, so one of the first things I would look at is just, you can even physically see this. Look at their body and see, are they symmetrical from right to left? Is a big one is their pelvis tilted forward or backwards? Is one shoulder lower than the other? And these could be some cues that maybe they need to do some physical therapy to get their body physically back into balance. Because he talked about, a lot of people, he's seen bone regrow. He's seen people who couldn't have kids are suddenly able to have kids because they're, just everything's back in order. And anyway, so obviously, the HMR is great. The hypnosis is great, but just there's another tool as well.
How do you spell Peter Egoscue? Did you
Egoscue?
say?
Yes, it's Egoscue. And there are tons of videos showing you different physical therapy for free online too. So
that's really cool. The stroke recovery is really something I want to learn more of. Again, having people who post-stroke coming to me, and it's fascinating. Thank you. Sorry, I've got something to add to it as well, which you reminded me. I was watching a Systema martial arts video, where there were two brothers. They were twins, and one of them had a massive stroke to the point where he wasn't able to communicate or even move his body. And the other brother the doctor said there's no hope for the guy with the stroke, but the brother didn't give up and used a lot of massage and touch to rehabilitate the body. And after only, I think, 10 months, the brother that had had the stroke, from being a vegetable, could actually walk with just a slight weakness on one side. So, massage is also touch. Massage is a huge tool as well.
And being twins, they would have had very intense rapport bonding and sharing. So that would have been the best person on the planet to administer that kind of therapy. I was going to jump back to the other question that you asked regarding the difference between long-term injuries in athletes versus non-athletes. What struck out, I wanted to point out, is the reaction to the injury at the point of the injury. A lot of the athletes will sustain an injury that would take a normal person out. I mean, done. They're on crutches, whatever. But the athlete, because they were doing it while playing a game, will sustain an injury and still be able to continue, because in their mind, they're playing a game. That's how they can take the abuse, the injuries, the impacts that they can take. And I wanted to point that out. That's why the earlier you can program reactions like this into children, it's been shown the less injuries they will sustain in their lifetime, because they don't see everything as a traumatic hit. Their body won't register it as such. Does that make sense?
Yeah, getting hurt can be fun. Almost.
Yeah, and again, I've done this with kids out in public, and it's amazing the reaction that they'll have. And I can tell which parents are the helicopter parents, because the kid will, trip and smack, and the first thing I'll do is, awesome save, way to go. And they're like, well, what? And you can see the conflict going in their head. They're like, but mom said when that happens, I almost died, and you just said it was awesome? And they don't cry, and the mom's like, what happened? Oh, he tripped. Oh, honey, are you okay? And then the kid starts crying, and I'm like, good luck. Sorry, kid. All right. What else we got? Did I just blow you? Yes,
You're just like, sorry, kid. Boom.
Yeah, sorry,
Done.
kid. Silence. Wow. Another thing that I wanted to point out a few questions back with Lenora, language patterning, because I know we've got some gurus in here that have taken classes and things like that. When you asked about reference to walls and learning, there are patternings like that where I could say something like, Lenora, because you've got your walls are lighter colored, you'll notice that you're much more calm and you learn a lot more. And everybody noticed how you were like, oh, okay.
I meant as in, oh, okay, I'm following your thought process. Like you're pointing something out and you're making a relation like, yeah, it is a common color. You can't argue with that. So you'll feel calmer.
But you can use that. It gets used all the time. And you'll watch people that don't have any background in this. And you'll go, because your desk is a dark color, it allows you to absorb more information and you learn faster.
Okay.
You can use that.
Yeah, go for it. You can use that. Sorry.
For almost anything. I've used it with kids.
Okay.
Well, it's a good thing you're wearing a green shirt, because if you weren't wearing a green shirt, it probably would have hurt more.
Okay.
And they look down and they're like, I'm wearing a green shirt. Oh, it's a good thing I was wearing a green shirt. Man, bumping my head on that table could have hurt.
Thank you.
There's so many different applications. The cool thing about NLP, especially when Dr. David's teaching it, I love watching the newbies react the exact same way I did when I was a newbie, where you're just like, there's how many patterns and what. And then the last day when you're doing word salad and he's tossing all of these different word languaging patterns and you're riffing on it, I consider that to be like level 3 out of 5. Level 5 is where you actually forget the names of the patterns. You just know what they do and the mechanics behind it, and you're using it fluently without you even realizing it.
Okay.
We've got some graduates here. Do you guys agree? What's your input on that?
It's interesting that you brought up cause effect and combined with the complex equivalence, which really is how we create all the beliefs that we have. And so also just noticing the softeners that you use in the language, often like if and it might and etc. So it's really helpful to start sentences with that. But one thing that I use, because I do a lot of regression therapy, when I go back to, let's say, root cause, or let's say there is 3 different events of certain trauma that I take people first to. One is they associate to the feeling, maybe they see picture and they go to the first event, they go to the second and the third, and sometimes 4th and 5th, and they connect, I let them connect and find out what they believe the problem is. And they usually start to come up with these underlying beliefs. And they always start with this, I am this way because of that, or and that means that I'm just stuck this way. And there's like, you can, and of course you write down the presenting problem and you write down all those beliefs. It's really great way to elicit. So I say to people, let's play like Chinese whisperers. I'm going to start the sentence and then you're going to continue. And that's that's kind of what we do first to elicit. And so it goes something like this. And I feel like nobody loves me because, and they continue. So they fill in the gap. The next one is like, and that means, and they fill in the gap. And then later, when we do the change process, we install new beliefs, same way, using that pattern of cause, effect, and complex equivalence, but in a way in which they create their own meaning and they make their sentences. So that's sort of like one of the interventions, very powerful intervention, because those are beliefs, and beliefs together create a story. And you change your story, you change your life.
Nailed it.
That was beautifully said. Oh, we have more friends here. Hi.
Yes.
Question for you. How would you, and the wheels are now going in my head. When you're making audios, how do you implement them in that? Like, now, because you're laying down or because you're taking time for yourself, you'll notice da 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 da.
A lot of times I get back to the intake form and I revisit all my notes. And when I do recordings, I make sure I put their words back, because remember, echo, their words are the sweetest melody for their unconscious mind. So if you feed that back, there's not going to be any resistance. And at least you start with that, and then you get yes, 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 consciously or unconsciously. It's like doing the sales process. More they agree, more likely they're going to take the next suggestion, and more of those suggestions that take, more receptive they become. And that's one of the patterns too.
Look at that. It's like wheeling and dealing over here, Samo. Thank you.
I'll also add to that, with these, cause and effect, complex equivalence kind of statements, you can say anything causes anything else. But it is also true that if you kind of start out by either one, kind of making small leaps, things that are very easy for somebody to believe, and get them in the mode, or two, also just doing a lot of pacing, which is just telling them things that are true, that are verifiably true. You get them in a more receptive, more trance-like state. And towards the end, you can start taking much bigger leaps and have it just go in. Because if you said the big leap at the beginning, most people would say, I'd never believe that. But honestly, most of us, by the time you've been brought into that trance, we'll all just let it go through unfiltered. So
that's so true. And also one thing that I could add that might bring some value here is no. Like, when you get no from your client or customer, it's same as people run away from pain 4 times more than they move towards pleasure. This is something that I realized that every time you get no, it's like you have to have at least 4 yeses to kind of even out to get back to where you were. So yes, starting with those simple, verifiable truths to where they can nod their head. That's most important, this unconscious movement. And sort of then you start to pace and lead. And never you don't stop pacing. You always pace. Some people think, oh, you pace, and then you start lead. No, it's like you constantly bring back and you constantly take them by the hand and guide them to where you believe will be better for them, if that's your aim.
Anybody else got anything to share with that? When I talked about level 5 is where it becomes so natural that you're not even thinking about, well, am I going to do a complex equivalent, or it just becomes a way that you talk. I know that there have been a couple of times where, like even now, Savo's got this way down way more than I do. Because when you were asking, I was like, is that complex equivalence? Because I haven't had to think of it in the title style. I just do it so naturally now that when I'm working with clients, when I'm out in public, it's just the way I talk anymore.
And I can totally recognize that level 5, that inside of you, you don't have to go back, and you probably don't teach NLP classes. And let's say if you were teaching NLP, then you have to label it, because if you can't label something, then you can't manage and maneuver it, mold it, and change it. It's same thing, like label can work against you. They say if you label a child, you limit the child. Yes, but also if you label something, then you can influence it. And yes, for people who are starting, I think it's important so that they get the concept, and from there they just start to integrate that and to live that.
I've actually told a couple of songwriters that they need to take a class in NLP. They're like, what? I'm like, when you understand the construct, the foundational building blocks for communication, which is basically what NLP is, then you can understand how to create songs that have the ebb and the flow and the emotional attachments and the regression stuff and all of that. You know, you listen to some of, once you understand NLP, listen to some of your favorite songs and you're like, oh, I see what they, oh, I know what they, oh, that's, and you quickly understand why it was so easy to anchor. And then I'm trying to remember who pointed, I think it was Simon Sinek, I know, Vin pointed out, can you recite all the words on a page of one of your favorite books? And everybody's like, no. Can you recite, can you sing an entire song, your favorite song? And ironically, most songs have the same amount of words in them as a page in a book. But because there's music and rhythm attached to them, you remember all the words.
Now I'm singing Ace the Bass, so thank you very much.
I would like to bring up one more thing, because I would always feel guilty if just talking about language patterns and influence in general, but not mentioning metaphors. If you really truly listen to the deepest parts of yourself, that subtle voice in the background that they say, actually Dr. David Snyder said that. He said the voice is not weak, but it's so deep. That's why it's so subtle and so quiet. And if you listen to that voice, you're gonna notice that all these metaphors and symbols and stories that you tell yourself that are really creating your life, whether in positive or negative way. But that's the structure, like DJ was saying, of your beliefs is it's like. And then you listen to some people like John Grinder or Richard Bandler, or let's say even this guy Tony Robbins, who has story for every single situation. And you know, as soon as he wants to elicit the state, he's just like, boom, he knows. I already know what story he's going to fire, because he's so good at telling stories, understanding metaphors, symbols. And so once you incorporate that part with language patterns, I think you really become unstoppable. That's my opinion. I wonder, what do you guys think about that?
Loving that insight.
I got to jump in real quick. The reason that I giggled, one downside to learning NLP and all the above is almost the equivalent of the downside of learning magic and then going to a magic show. Because you're like, oh, I see what you're doing. Oh, look what they did. Oh, that was good. That was, oh, And it can also be very frustrating when you hear political speeches. And you're like, oh, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. Oh, look. Oh, that was a good writer. That was, And the people that don't study any of this stuff don't understand why it affects them so much. Just like the people that don't study magic are completely certain that that person has the magical ability to make a dove appear out of nowhere. Poof. Had to throw that in there.
I thought for sure you were going to say, like, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Oh, yes, that's pretty much it. One kind of like Chinese facial reading. Once you flip that switch and learn that stuff, there's no shutting it off. And that leaves us with 11 minis left in this hour. Do we have any other topics or questions? Or this has been a really good one, by the way. I appreciate you guys. I love this second hour. I learned so much.
I want to flip back to more ways to generate oxytocin and pleasure hormones just in the everyday world. Come and give me some of your ways of doing it, please.
Yes, I'm gonna give you an oversimplified, and then I'm gonna let everybody else finish with all of their favorites. Pay close attention to all the things that make you smile. What's the common thread? Pay attention to physiology. Pay attention to how you react to certain movies. I'm right there with Lenora. I love comedy. I love rom-coms. I've probably watched almost every Pixar movie that they've made because they are cartoons made for adults who have to watch movies with children. But it also comes down to some of the simplest things. Like when I'm working with clients that have a really hard time remembering something good from their childhood, I will ask them, did you have a favorite food? I mean, like a favorite food. Like when you knew that like pizza night was coming up in 3 days, you were happy for 3 days because pizza night was coming up and you were going to get to have your pizza. Or the way you felt if you liked homemade chocolate chip cookies and you could smell that smell. I mean, they put it into air fresheners, chocolate chip cookies. It's evil because it's deceitful. But when that smell came in and you came into the kitchen and mom was smart enough and protective enough to not let you bite it while it was still the same temperature as the surface of the sun. But as soon as she knew that it wasn't going to injure you and you could grab onto that warm cookie and take that first bite and the chocolate was still gooey, melty goodness. Remember what that felt like? Sometimes it can be just a story. Sometimes it can be physiology. Sometimes it's a song. Songs are very powerful. There are certain channels I won't listen to when I'm in a bad mood. There are certain songs that I will listen to when I'm in a bad mood to elevate me, to help bring me out of it. And exercise and moving have been proven over and over and over to be one of the best defenses against depression. One thing that you'll notice, yes, that people who have depression have in common is inactivity. And I've broken my normal protocol for this. I answered first, so everybody else, hurry up. We've got 7 minutes. Sorry.
I'm gonna pop in really quick. One thing that came up, and then it's gonna twist. So when I go out, I like to say hello to people. I like to see how they're doing, or if I see somebody dressed and they catch my eye, I'll give them a compliment. And I really find that incredibly powerful because I know I'm being sincere and I see their response immediately. And the other thing that I noticed was just tonight on how I receive information that people share with me. So I was actually messaging you and Linda in the chat, and you both made a comment to me, and it was very, very lovely. And in the past, I would have been like, oh, they're just saying it to say it. And I actually received it this time, which I thought was really powerful in shifting your awareness of noticing, yes, you're giving, but also noticing when you're humbly receiving and kindly receiving. And I think that's something also really important to help raise your awareness. Thank you to you and Linda.
I have to tag on to that real quick. And maybe I'll make that a topic for next week, is the art of receiving compliments and the importance of it. I've met so many people that will deflect a compliment. And I had it pointed out to me in a training. It's the equivalent of, here's a gift, and you're like, yeah, that's nice, and throwing it on the ground. And you don't even, the gift was free and it was designed just for you. Yes, but I don't deserve the gift. I didn't give it to you because you deserved it. I gave it to you because, in my mind, I just wanted to give it to you.
And all of this kind of links back into the topic from last week about how to increase your Shen. So,
Yes.
It's vital stuff if we want to live a really good life.
Get really good at complimenting people, because it doesn't just benefit them, it benefits you and anybody that witnesses it. The same with doing the victory pose in public. I've said it many, many times. If you don't believe me, experiment with it yourself. Somebody says something and you're out in public, you go, yes! And a big smile. The oxytocin dump that you get from it is huge. The person that you did it to gets a huge dump. And anybody that witnesses it gets a portion of that as well. They've proven it over and over and over. And I have so much fun with it, especially when you're in stores that have the big round security mirror so that you can see behind you. And somebody will say something cool. I'll be like, yes, that's awesome. And I'll look up in the mirror and few people behind me be like, and they'll grin. They're like, yeah. They have no idea what it was about, but you can tell that they got an oxytocin hit simply by viewing the victory pose. That's why another good thing that if you're having a bad day, I challenge anybody to watch like the funny little pet videos or something like that. Stuff that makes you laugh and go, oh. And if you're really looking for something that, if you want to judge a partner, watch some of the military coming home videos. Oh yeah, I saw that. Oh yeah, me, Rock of Gibraltar, give me a freaking bath towel, because I'm just like, that is so cool. And I know that the oxytocin dump that I'm getting from watching that, whee!
I hadn't taken into account the mirror neurons response to seeing somebody doing a victory pose. Yes.
Oh yes. Please. Think about, oh, go ahead, please, Matt.
was just going to do a quick tag on that too. That long term, that's what the posture is. I forgot.
One more time, your mic cut out a little bit.
It doesn't matter.
That does.
Yes, it does, please.
I'll share it next week. I have to remember what it was.
Matt.
Yes, sir. So, Fran, I wanted to mention something when you're talking about those kinds of hormones, especially connection hormones. They're very closely related to physical touch. And I've found that one of the best ways, excuse my voice, I've been getting over something. One of the best ways to really ramp that stuff up is actually through kinesthetics, specifically kinesthetic rheostats. And the way you can do that is, instead of like a playfulness button or whatever that hit is that you want, instead of just having a single point, have a slider. Up the arm, up the neck, up the chest, whatever it is. And especially when you're doing self-work, that's when I mainly use it. Is I'm doing self-work, I'm just ramping up the dopamine to make sure that those things, take. So maybe that'll help.
Great tip.
And
Fantastic.
that tops off our hour. And I just had a quick flashback wrap around to a question that Lenora had asked about when doing recordings. Goes right back to Dr. David's bullseye. The most important thing is know your outcome. If you know what outcome you want, the recordings come so much easier. The words flow, all the above. Anytime we were doing exercises, word salad, things of that nature, and if I saw anybody that was struggling, I would say, what's your outcome? Well, I don't know. That's why you are struggling. If nothing, make up a scenario. I used to love telling them, pretend that you're a pirate doing a traffic report on an accident on the corner. And all of a sudden, because they were able to step out of character, they had a scene in mind and they had an outcome. All of a sudden, they're talking in ways that they never saw coming from them, and we're down live. Look at us, Bob. And the look on their face when they got done, they were like, I can't believe it. I said, because you didn't have any outcome in mind. You were trying to pull words out of the air and make them make sense for no reason.
Yeah, getting into character makes a big difference too when you're doing that. That's how getting into character is really powerful.
EJ, I wanna. Do you remember when you were answering the question about oxytocin in the beginning, and you said there might be a common thread when you think about the times that something that happened and then you were maybe smiling or you were happy and that you were feeling those sort of effects of dopamine and oxytocin. Now, what something that I do really briefly for some people, I know there are some people here who do therapy. I think Matthew, I think I saw you in Vegas. You were doing the speaking there, and I was actually really mad that they didn't give you the one of three first places and they gave it to someone else. You did a great job, brother. So I see some people here, they do therapy, and I do want to mention this because I think it's so crucial. It's something that helped me in my practice for more over 7-8 years ago. I just clicked when I was doing regression with people. TJ, it's so related to what you said. I was usually going first to major, crucial, critical scenes that have everything to do with pain and some sort of pain. Maybe people were thinking they're not enough, etc. And so And it was really beneficial because there is so many ways that you can deal with that. There is a dialogue with the person. There's, change the pictures, words, make it funny, make yourself 20 freaking feet tall in the picture. It changes the way you feel, right? And then you do timeline, you do a bunch of things. Now, but this is one of the most important things that I realized, like what you said, and I never read this anywhere. You said, find common thread. What about, and you were talking about things that make you smile. And when you do that with people first, then people get that feeling. And first of all, they anchor that to you. They come to the first session, you take them to happy scenes, and you find something in common. And then you can easily take that and future pace. It's so easy. That's a piece of cake. But and the alternative is true, the opposite dichotomy. If you take them to a negative scene, they're going to freak the hell out. Guess what? They're open their eyes. They're going to look at you, and maybe you help them, but I don't think.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sabo. And unfortunately, my promise has always been that I would keep these at 2 hours. And that brings us to the top of our second hour. And I want to respect your guys' time. I will say it every single time. Time is the only thing I cannot give to you. I would if I could, but I can't. So for you guys to take such a precious commodity out of your life, out of your day, and share it with me means more than I have the vocabulary to express. So I hope that you guys got something out of this tonight. For those of you watching live on YouTube, and by the way, hi Mom, love you. Yeah. All right. Okay. As always, if you're watching the recording, if you're new to this, if you're on YouTube, please smash all the buttons, the subscribe, the like, the ring the bell, tap the keys, leave a comment, and have an awesome, amazing life. If you guys think of something for the next meeting, please write them down and for the second hour, and know that I appreciate you so much. And I will see you guys hopefully again in 7. Now go out and be nice to people.
Good night, TJ. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
TJ.
Bye, guys.